So I'm Daniel Marshall. I'm currently working at BMAT STEM Academy, and Wilberforce have asked me to write the report, analyse the data, that kind of thing. So I just want to thank them again for this opportunity, just to do this Centre for Excellence thing. 'Cause I think it's very important. So our assessment topic our research topic this year was all about assessment, because the current situation of Wilberforce College, what we wanted to do was we wanted to create a scheme of work where we could easily develop our action research plans and maintain teaching hours and that kind of thing, because it's been difficult to balance this year. So what we've tried to do is look at how assessment feedback can impact the motivation and engagement of GCSE students. I think the motivation for this is kind of obvious, the fact that we've had 2 lockdowns now, and just anecdotally for my students, I've noticed a drop in confidence completely, not just after the first lockdown, but also the second as well. So we're looking at very much how to improve their confidence through assessment feedback, because we all know how important assessment is, and the fact that we should look at how we're feeding back to ensure that confidence is built throughout the year. So I guess our question that the report was trying to answer was, can one effectively use feedback to improve the engagement and motivation of GCSE students? And through our research throughout the year, looking at different literatures, academic reports, books, that kind of thing, they all say that feedback does in fact impact engagement and how students are motivated towards their studies. So definitely we thought it was a good investigation to try and tackle, especially with the kind of unique situation that GCSE research students are in the fact that on a normal kind of academic year, they've failed once, and so their confidence is already quite low, and that's only exacerbated by COVID. So I want to break down this presentation into our motivation, section 1. Section 2 will be our method. Third will be the results, and then fourth, conclusion, and a bit of evaluation as well. So introduction and motivation then. So these are 2019 stats to say that the average pass rate nationally was 21%. It's last year, get me, honestly. 2019, I mean, it feels like 1 year, doesn't it? Which was a negative 1.4% point shift on the previous year. So on a normal academic year, results are quite difficult to achieve with the GCSE research course, and it's all about how we can improve that, irrespective of COVID. And unfortunately, even if this was a normal academic year, Hull is considered the 5th worst city in the UK for economic growth, and that obviously has an impact on how students, perceive their academic studies, their attainment, their engagement, that kind of thing. I haven't sourced any here, but there are sources to back that up that are present in the report. So we had action points for our investigation, 3 main action points. So we wanted to see whether cutting assessments into smaller chunks will perhaps improve their motivation in that, okay, if they can get this smaller assessment right, will this then improve their attainment in future assessments? This idea of chunking, but we'll discuss that when we get to it. Our second point was making feedback more positive and making any negatives actionable. I think we can all speak as teachers. If we get negative feedback on our lessons, it's always demotivating if sometimes those negative points aren't actionable. We can't maybe build on that or something like that. We can't improve if there's, criticism's kind of useless if it's not constructive. And so we try to reflect that in the feedback we gave to our students. And thirdly, we wanted students to direct their own feedback. Forgive me, I don't have the sources with me at the minute, but they're all evidenced in the report. Allowing students to direct their own feedback supposedly has a positive impact on their attainment and motivation too. But unfortunately, this wasn't specified to GCSE maths. This was more generally, I forget what the subject is at the minute. But there's evidence to suggest that could work. And so we wanted to investigate these 3 points in tandem, making our scheme of work so that we had frequent assessments and tweaking our assessment from covers to ensure that these 3 action points could be addressed. So I'll talk about these individually. So chunking, I was quite hungry when I made this, so I'll put a picture of cheese. Higton claimed that informal methods of assessment often give students better opportunities to demonstrate their knowledge. So that's just another facet of how perhaps engagement and motivation could be improved through smaller assessment windows. Yeah, just as I mentioned with the feedback, if feedback isn't actionable, it's probably going to have a negative impact on how we perceive ourselves as teachers. Never mind the students, when after they've been through 2 lockdown periods, we want to try and make their confidence better. We want to improve their attainment. And so we made sure that our feedback was positive and any negatives were actionable there. And this was just a source here from Wilson in 2012 suggesting exactly what we've just said, in that if students are able to direct their own feedback, regulate what's going on, that might potentially improve their engagement and motivation as well. So 3 action points in tandem. And now I'm going to talk about how we went about to try and achieve that. So this is section 2, our methodology and approach. So I'm going to talk about 4 things we administered throughout the academic year in terms of our action research. Sorry, I keep forgetting that phrase. Our first one we're going to talk about is micro assessments. Second one, macro assessments, kind of bigger assessments. And then some questionnaires I want to talk about as well. And the questionnaires are going to be key to our kind of results and what we found. And yeah, we're going to speak about that shortly. So the micro assessments. So as I mentioned, we wanted to make a scheme of work for our GCSE Maths Resit course that allowed the students to perhaps become more confident. And we wanted to be able to monitor that through regular assessments. Now, I believe these micro assessments were administered fortnightly, and attainment was tracked. And hopefully we would use that data then to see perhaps an improvement in attainment, and then maybe be able to link that with engagement and motivation. That was our motivation anyway. Next were our macro assessments. So these were the bigger assessments, these GCSE past papers that we're going to give students. And the front cover on this is dead important. So what we did was, you can see an excerpt of it there. Hopefully it's clear on your screen. I did snipping tool this, so I apologize for the poor quality. We have boxes there for students to pick questions where they want feedback. So we wanted them to take control of how their feedback is administered, by which questions they need the most help with. Then we wanted a facet of the investigation that involved some qualitative data, some opinions of how teachers mark, of how teachers assess, and then student opinions of those as well. So we administered student surveys after each micro-assessment to try and assess where their engagement and motivation was at a certain period. We did them directly after the micro-assessments so that we had somewhat control over how they were feeling about maths. If it's after each assessment, normally, it's, I guess what I'm trying to say is assessments probably will have a negative impact of their engagement, but if we gave them those surveys after each assessment, then hopefully that would negate some of that sort of opinions of maths straight after an assessment. So we'll talk about the data of these very shortly. And so this is section 3, our results and our analysis. A lot of qualitative data, unfortunately, here. We do have some quantitative data, but due to COVID and staffing restraints and that kind of thing, we were unable to really get to the bottom of this investigation. But we do have something worthwhile to talk about, definitely. So again, limitations due to COVID-19. I'm sure that's been the song throughout this day. COVID-19 has once again wormed its way into ruining another potentially successful action research project. But we can still salvage things from this, absolutely. So yeah, we've got our results here. So I kept the same sections as before. We're going to talk about our micro assessments, our macro assessments, staff questionnaires, and then student questionnaires, and the worthwhile data we've drawn from each. So unfortunately, with the student questionnaires, there's not a great deal to discuss. So what I've done is I've put sort of what they thought of each assessment, or each assessment type rather, in the micro assessments and the macro assessments. So we interviewed about 50, I think about 51 GCSE research students, which is a massive turnout due to COVID. Well done on Wilberforce for collecting that. We wanted to garner their opinions on whether they found the micro assessments helpful, but also what I wanted to do was split this into whether they enjoy maths and whether they don't enjoy maths, because I think that's important. I think if students enjoy maths, they're probably gonna, say they prefer things a lot more than those that don't. And I think it's important, especially with the GCSE research course, to address those students that don't enjoy maths, because I think those are the ones where we want to get a grasp on, trying to improve their engagement, motivation, to hopefully improve attainment there. So as you can see, these pie charts here, from those that enjoy maths, so that pie chart on the left, 86% found them helpful. 86% found that the chunking of the micro assessments, how small they were, allowed them to not necessarily improve their engagement and motivation as such. Sorry, I can hear a bit of an echo. Apologies for that. But they found them helpful in some way. They found them helpful potentially to address any misconceptions, improve their confidence in maths. We weren't too strict in what we defined as helpful there, and on retrospect, we maybe should have been. What I find interesting, sorry, my Zoom window's in the way of my results, can't have that. We found that of those that don't enjoy maths, do apologize, it's gone off the screen, that's fabulous. 61% there of students that don't enjoy maths still found these micro assessments helpful. So perhaps that's a link between the chunking of the assessments and how those students, even students that don't like maths, even students that hate maths, can still benefit from chunking of assessments in order to perhaps help them improve. So that's cool to see, I guess is my point. The TLDR of that is it's cool to see. So our next question for them was to see whether they preferred teacher marked assessments or student marked assessments. The reason for this is if they preferred teacher marked assessments, well, then it's probably a good idea that we start addressing how we feed back to them as teachers. And overwhelming there, you can see 100% of those that enjoy maths preferred teacher marked assessments, and those that do not enjoy maths, 78% did. So definitely there's a big market there, a big opportunity to try and address how we're delivering that feedback. And I think that's quite an important point that our investigation has raised for the Wilberforce College cohort and how we can improve things. So this is perhaps the coolest part of the investigation, in my opinion. So these surveys that we did, we also did the same for the macro assessments. So these macro assessments are the bigger assessments where we had front covers so that students could address their questions that they wanted the most feedback on. They could direct their feedback and sort of self-assess how they're feeling about maths at a given point, namely after an assessment. So we allowed the students from the Microsoft Forms survey to rate their engagement and motivation out of 5, out of 5, whether they feel, either the completely unengaged and unmotivated with maths, to whether they feel engaged and motivated with maths. And so the initial assessment there at the start of the year, assessment 4 was administered at the top of my head, I think about February, and then assessment 5 was March. And as you can see there, average scores of motivation and engagement there through the roof after assessment 5, which is really good to see, particularly after we've had a second lockdown. The student confidence issues that are already there from the recent, the recent cohorts we have, dramatic improvement there. So there's something to be said about not only how Wilberforce's maths GCSE provision is going and how well they're doing there, but also there's something in these macro assessments to say, okay, whether it be how students direct their feedback, how staff provide that feedback there, contributes towards that improvement in engagement and motivation. Yeah, and I think it's really excellent to see. Had we had more time and had COVID not been a thing, I would have loved to really pinpoint exactly what they valued the most out of all of this. But yeah, I just think that's really cool. That definitely some facet of these macro assessments improves the engagement and motivation there. So this is time graph to kind of show the assessment grades there from the 19 to 20 academic year as kind of a baseline to the 2021 academic year, the current academic year we're in. And as you can see from the initial assessment there through till assessment 5 of these bigger macro assessments, you can see a slight trend there in attainment improvement. Now, I don't think that's strong enough to draw any major conclusions or say something is a cause of something else, but definitely a trend there in improvement could be linked towards their improvement in engagement and motivation. I think it's really nice to see. Staff questionnaires. So I'm going to quickly run through this because I am conscious of time. I'm sorry, I ramble a lot. So the staff questionnaires, really wanted to ask staff how they prefer assessment marking and what they deem as most useful for the students. So I'll quickly rattle through this. So we can see the majority of staff say that self-marking by students has the most positive impact on student engagement. Whether that's truthful engagement or not is a different matter. You know, the students could be just getting their head down, maybe paying attention, seeing what they've got wrong, what they've got right, and not particularly caring about the method. We need to be more specific on that, I think, but it's an indication there of what staff value the most as a positive contributor of student engagement. Which method of feedback do you consider has the greatest positive impact on student motivation? So we're kind of split there. So I wanted to be specific with the method of feedback. So not just assessment marking and how students mark through their assessments, but by what means do we give feedback to the students? So we had attainment grade, whether you just whack a grade on there and leave it there. Attainment score, whether you just whack a score on there, no grade, leave it there. An effort grade there, and then a teacher comment. Surprisingly enough, the staff from Wilberforce College and our partner schools valued an attainment score the most, which is quite interesting to me. But second up is the teacher comment. And I think both of those in tandem do have a positive impact on students, but that's purely anecdotal. I don't have any evidence really to back that up. This one's quite interesting. It took me a while to do this pie chart, a bit fiddly, but are there any these methods of feedback that you make students feel less confident in maths? So 71% said yes, there are methods of feedback that you've specified there that do have a negative impact on confidence. And by far there is attainment grade. And I think as GCSE maths teachers, we can all see that. Do you know what I mean? You see a kid gets a 2 on his paper, a 3, and if it ain't a 4, I'll throw it to a side. You know, I don't really want to go through the answers. And I think, yeah, that's paramount in perhaps we, as well as giving them attainment grades so they can see where they're at, because we think that's important, we should also back that up with a teacher comment or some form of saying, you know, these are the things you've got wrong, and here's how you can improve. Because I think that'll allow us to negate that drop in confidence as soon as they see that grade that's not 4, that they can actually get there and action that. So we're going to turn to our conclusion and our evaluation. Sorry, I'm conscious of time. I do apologize. Let me just move my Zoom window to the other side there. I wanted to emphasize that this investigation was quite narrow. We don't have a lot of quantitative data. But we have found things that are worthwhile and hopefully transferable to other colleges and other centres that provide GCSE research. So what we found was, looking at that chart that we showed, student motivation and engagement has increased by 59.4% and 45% respectively. So from that initial assessment through to assessment 5, That's a massive increase, 50% on almost both. And that's really good to see. And I think there's lots of motivation for this to be carried on and hopefully specify what students value about those macro assessments there. We also found, excuse me, I've lost my mouse, apologies. We also found that which methods of assessment marking were most effective. Well, according to our staff and from our partner schools, self-marking by students was the method of assessment marking which had the greatest impact in engagement. But peer marking, in fact, I didn't show this pie chart on our presentation, but in our report, we found that peer marking, when students peer mark their own work, that has the least impact on engagement. I wouldn't know kind of what to pin that on, but it's just what our staff found, and perhaps it does, perhaps it doesn't. We have no evidence really to back that up either way. So identifying effective methods of feedback provision. So I guess I'm kind of repeating myself here. So 29% found that just an attainment grade, just banging an attainment grade on there, was detrimental to student motivation. And that really highlights how important it is to feedback positively, provide any negatives to be actionable so that this loss of student motivation is mitigated. Because as teachers, we know the benefit of saying, oh, you're on a grade 2, you're on a grade 3, you know, for our kind of data purposes and that kind of, that side of things, I should say, rather. But we also need to not make the students fear the fact that they failed. And more importantly, how can we provide the steps so that they turn that fail to a pass? Because that's what we're here for at the end of the day. An evaluation, I put together, I guess, a nice graphic here to show what we've done well, I think, in the report and what we could improve. So we've shown that feedback can be a vector of improvement of attainment and motivation through staff opinion, through attainment, through student opinion, that kind of thing, mainly all qualitative data. And we've also shown that students value a variety of teacher-led feedback methods. And so that could, you know, provide potential platform for further investigation there. The key point I want to get at there is these black boxes I've got here. That improvement in motivation and engagement is huge. And yeah, it's a real credit to the Wilberforce team there for showing that. And, you know, perhaps this could be a further platform for investigation. Our negatives there, we've got a lot of uncontrollable variables, student personality traits, COVID, that kind of thing. And we don't have a lot of quantitative data. So perhaps on retrospect, we would have actioned the macro assessments prior to when we did, so that we could get a better indication of how students viewed them. Thank you very much.